game on. In a space too far from anything to be nothing, a blue light shines into the void. Through the shadows, shapes appear. People, stories, wonders, and mysteries. Live from Elgin, Illinois at the Blue Box Cafe, it's Tales by the Blue Light with your host, me, James Wilder. This month, like every month, we're going to be calling in stories through this blue light. These stories commit all forms of wondrous science fiction tales, fantasy adventures, and horrors to make you shudder. So join us as we discover new places, new people, and take new journeys together by listening by this blue light, like you might by the fireside. All the stories you'll be hearing today are brand new and they were written by yours truly. So if you like what you're hearing, put something in the tip jar or go find me on Patreon. But before we get started, as usual, I've been practicing a trick to perform here. Okay, so for my trick this week, I have something very special ready. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to pull up a cheat code for my life. Okay, so up, left, right, B-A, start. Okay, great. I have extra lives now. You know, how do you think that worked, actually, come to think of it?
I don't know, but I could use it.
Yeah, you know, do you think I should test this? I mean, I feel like that'd be pretty dangerous to test.
Probably. I mean, like, I'm not going to, go step out in front of a bus to make sure to give me an extra life, but if you want to.
Yeah, that's not a good call. You know what? I think I'll just not test it this right around. All right, looks like we have a guest coming in from this blue light. Who is it? It's some sort of pixelated character. Oh no.
Oh, yes.
It's, welcome to the show, Maxima Max of the Maxima Max siblings, Madison, Indiana's 17th most popular Super Mario Bros. 3 ripoff.
Please, call me Maxie.
I don't want to do that.
Why? Because I'm a soul maximum.
It's just weird.
You can't handle the extreme fun of my video games. We even got a custom controller back in the 90s.
Oh no, you didn't. You didn't. Please, just tell me you didn't.
It was the Maxi Pad.
Of course it was.
It had a wings for extra comfort.
Great, fantastic. Was it super absorbent too?
No. What are you talking about? It was a gamer controller. Don't be daft.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Look, just because our game series never took off and was primarily sold in the blockbuster bargain bins, doesn't mean you get to look down on us. My game had some amazing level design.
Okay, well, what was great about it?
Well, we had a level that was ripped off of one of the best Super Mario Bros. 3 levels. And if Nintendo hadn't sued us, oh boy, watch out the world.
Okay, so let's not beat around the bush here. Your game's massively failed. What have you been doing with yourself since then?
Well, there's a lot of important work to be done in the video games off the screen. Frankly, a more important work. I've been primarily a restocker.
What's that mean?
Well, you know how when you leave a room in a video game and you come back in, and all the items are back in there again? You never think sorry. That's me. It's a good work. They give a dental too.
Oh wow, I had no idea there was even a job in video games.
Of course you didn't. You never think of all the hard work behind the scenes, do you?
Well, that's a bit low, but...
Look, forget it. I came to pitch something to you. Tales by the Blue Light. The video game.
Okay, I'm interested. That sounds like it could be a lot of fun. You know, you could hop around between different settings and places.
What? No. The plot would be that you would die, and I take over your show, and I make it awesome.
I don't like that.
Then I could run your show every month.
I don't like that.
So what do you say? You in?
No, absolutely not.
Well, in that case, I'm offered to go talk to the people who made Serial and This American Life. I have a great idea for a game where I get to run national public radio in real life. Ciao!
Bye! Well, that was certainly something. Certainly. I guess I better get us right going into our first story of the night. It's a little piece that we're calling What to Do with My Game Cartridge. Our first horror story of the evening, well, the only horror story of the evening. What to do with my game cartridge. Anonymous. Posted 3:41 a.m. at reddit.com. Saying, this is a true story, I swear, probably just makes it sound fake, but I don't know how else to reassure you all. It happened, and I don't know what to do next. So I'm posting this up on Reddit in the hopes that one of you has some idea what to do next. I went to my local game store. I guess I shouldn't say the name. I figured you guys will all call them 40 million times if I do, and this isn't their fault. And was looking for some new classic games to pick up. Yeah, I'm that pretentious snob who likes playing everything on the original cartridges, so sue me. I was, a regular there, so they let me flip through the cabinets of games without the usual supervising employee looking over my shoulder the whole time. There was the usual stuff, most of which I already owned, and the rest I didn't own for a reason. I knew I didn't, enjoy those games. I was starting to accept that anything I was going to get was going to be on eBay or Amazon when I flipped to a game I'd never seen before, Blink Zone 2. It was an NES cartridge, but one of those unlicensed third-party ones that, stuff like Bible games got put on. The cartridge looked old and didn't have any of the signs of being one of those recent games ported to the console for nostalgia freaks like me. Curious, I pulled out my phone and Googled it. I couldn't find any results for it. I was only like $5, so I decided, why the heck? Why not? Blink Zone sounded like something my late brother Zach would have liked to, so I felt right. I brought the cartridge home, got out my old Nintendo, and plugged the game in. The game didn't boot up, so I pulled it out and blew in it. Yes, I know you're not supposed to do that, but it's an old habit. So I plugged it back in. This time, the title screen appeared. There was an image of a bouncing pixel sprite with a sword and a giant blinking eye for head. Blink Zone 2. Start. Passcode. Copyright 1991. Nebulous Software. I sighed when I saw the word passcode. I wasn't surprised the game didn't have a battery save for memory, but I hated writing down passwords in order to save my progress. Still, a game was a game, and I could use it to fix old school gaming. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but there's something about classic games that I just don't find in modern gaming. Sure, I can tell the design is still polished, and I can tell plenty of modern games are good, some just downright brilliant, but, designers having to work with the limited palette of 4, 6, and 8-bit games it always hits the right spot for me. Imagination is opened up by that simplicity, the abstraction, the lack of voice acting and realistic 3D animation is a feature, not a bug for me. So, when I pressed up on the D-pad to select start, I felt a shiver go up my spine. A brand new game. I'd never played. It brought me back to when I was a kid, and my brother Zach and I played together. We started with an Atari 2600, which was, it's fine, but when we got our NES, we played that thing nearly every night. The first level loaded. It was a pretty standard NES adventure game. There was an overworld where you played from a top-down perspective. Your little eye-head avatar wandering around a strange world that looked something like a mix between Mordor and Detroit. There were big fantasy buildings, but also chain link fences, or at least what I assumed were chain link fences considering the limited graphics. You wandered around and tried to avoid bad guys who could damage you if you touched them. And you have no defense against them, the overworld, until you enter into one of the many buildings and that cover the landscape. Then you enter a 2D scrolling platformer stage where you can actually affect the enemies. This is where the game actually got interesting. Your little eye-man can jump with A, and the B button can make him look at things and shoot an eye beam at them. At first I thought it was a laser, but legitimately I really think he's just looking at things with the way they did the art design. When you look at enemies, which looks like a variety of objects with arms and legs, they start to unravel, as much as a pixel sprite can unravel. For example, one enemy that looks like a book just loses its cover, and then it collapses into a bunch of pages. When you walk over its remains, you get both more health and an item that looks like a letter, which was cool. The insides of the levels use a lot of repeated assets, but they look like common places around a town. A school, a bakery, a town hall, etc. I blazed through the first few buildings and took out a bunch of baddies with my eyesight. I hit the first boss at the end of the school level, and it was wild. A waggly-armed school teacher with a book for a head. You had to jump and aim for the head to beat it. Pretty simple. The opening text to the boss was, "They're taking them. They're taking them. You need to defeat me. It's the only way you can learn where they are." I obliged the request and got a whole jumble of letters, so I decided it was time to actually see what I'd been collecting all this time. Opening up the menu with the start, I found the letters. Each unlocked an individual letter of a passcode. And there were a lot of passcodes. I'd only unlocked 2 passcodes so far, but I wasn't very far into the game, so I thought I'd try to put them in and see what else I got. After all, if they took me back to where I already was, I wouldn't lose anything. But just in case, I snapped a pic of the letters I'd unlocked so far. but when I put the passcode in. Okay, here's where you're not going to believe the story anymore. Here's where it gets weird. So I'm warning you, from here on out, things change, and I guarantee this happened. Downvote this post all you want, but I know what happened. I put the first passcode in, and instead of taking me to a new level, this came up. Jeremy Mackel, born October 3rd, 1978. Disappeared November 3rd, 1986. Status, unseen. Location, uploaded. I put in the second passcode and got this. Sarah Grace Hill, born June 23rd, 1986. Disappeared January 8th, 1994. Status, unseen. Location, uploaded. This naturally unnerved me. Were these missing kids? Was this part of the game? I decided to Google them. And they were missing kids. Real ones. And Sarah disappeared after the game was supposedly released. So obviously, I thought it was some sort of ROM hack. The cartridge was an old one, repurposed with a new game plugged into it. It happens all the time. But I also felt like that was me making excuses. I went back to the main menu and a new option appeared. Continue. The passcodes had never been real passcodes after all. I kept playing. I went through each new building in town and defeated the bosses. Each one was different, but their messages were similar. I looked away. I shouldn't have looked away, a tall man, maybe the mayor with a pen for a head, said. I freed them from my sin, said a priest with a cross said, which I didn't sacrilegiously destroy. I thought if I didn't say anything it would stop, said a woman in an office building. Boss by boss, I played through the game till I reached the final challenge. It took me a bit to realize how to activate it. I had to not only collect all the passcodes, but enter them all in, which took a while using an NES controller. Eventually, however, I had them. They were all more children. After they were entered, when I pressed continue, I wasn't taken back to the overworld, but right into a side-scrolling stage. Along the wall were pixelated pictures of children. Despite the level being fairly long, there were no enemies. Just the pictures, and ominous pop-up text telling me to look at them and saying, they must be seen. Finally, I reached the final boss. It was a giant, closed eye. It floated around in a pattern and shot out waves of energy that could hurt me. Standard NES boss stuff. I hit it a bunch of times, and the eye opened up. You are the seer, a pop-up text said, and the eye began to explode, because of course it did. It was a video game. When it finished exploding, though, things were different. There was a dirty house on the screen in the background, and my avatar. Alone now in a wasteland, the broken picture frame scattered on the ground. My avatar, which till now always faced the baddies, turned to face me. Make the unseen see. Tell them the seer is calling. What I thought was a passcode came up, but it wasn't. It was too long. It was a phone number. I called it. Hello? The voice on the other end was old. Hi, the seer is calling? I replied. There was a long silence on the other end of the call, and for a moment I thought the number was old and I'd just wasted my time to hit a dead end. Then instead of saying, sorry, wrong number, or what, he replied, my address is 21 South Maple Avenue, Cranton, Missouri. Come alone. I've waited a long time to show you this. He hung up. I called my work to tell them I needed a few days off for personal matters and packed a bag to start my drive from St. Louis. Before I got on the highway, I made another stop up, though. I went to a gun store. I wasn't sure what I'd see there, but I wanted to be prepared. The house was a mess. If it wasn't for the state-of-the-art satellite dishes on the roof, you'd think the place was abandoned. Old cars were up on blocks in the yard, and a dog that looked too wild to be anyone's pet was, peeing on the side of a collapsed shed. I took a deep breath, avoided getting the dog's attention, and knocked on the door. An old man in a stained white t-shirt and cargo shorts answered the door. You the seer? That's me. He nodded. Come on in then. The inside of the house was a mess too, but One that was at least somewhat taken care of. Computer towers, old and new, were everywhere. Papers with strange designs lined the walls. You beat the game then? He said nonchalantly as he looked through a milk crate of papers. I did. It was, interesting. Did you design it? He looked back at me, disappointed. You don't design something like that. What's your name? I told him, which I instantly regretted. You seem slow on the uptake, so I'm just going to level with you, kid. I frowned at the word kid. I was 40 years old. Only one of us is going to, and 40. Only one of us is going to leave this house alive. I frowned even deeper at that. I held my hands up parallel to my chest. Whoa there, look. I just came to see what was up with that game. He spat, the wad landing right on one of his old computer towers, scrawled something on a paper in the crate and stood up. You want to know what I've been doing here the last 45 years of my life? I've been saving children. I lowered my hands. Oh, the world's going to end someday, and I can see that. No one else can. The children, they don't deserve that, but we do. We do, don't we? We grew up, we got old. The kids, they're pure, untouched, so I saved them. I gulped and thought about that pistol I brought. It was hidden in the holster under my coat. How exactly did you save them? I asked. How you think? Built them to heaven. It's gotten better over the years. The early ones. Well, there wasn't much room on data storage back then, so I had to boil them down to the basics. He stumbled over a pair of double doors and opened it to a room containing a rig that looked like an old electric chair. Even now, that's the way to do it. You gotta burn a bit out of them to get the data. It smells terrible, but they're saved. She looked back to me, eyes wild. All of them saved, except for the naughty ones who escaped. But you met them, bad boys and girls. His fist clenched as he spoke, his whole left hand shaking. I looked at the blackened chair. You killed them. I saved them. Saved them, damn it. Why don't you listen to me? I knew you wouldn't understand. You walked behind one of the blinking computer towers. I reached into my coat. You don't understand the grace of my work. He pulled out a shining silver axe and hurled it at me. I shrieked and didn't even think of dodging it. 1 second it was in the air, and the next second it was in my shoulder, sticking out, handle wobbling in the air. I staggered back, trying to ignore it, and some part of me focused through, and I must have drawn the pistol and fired, and I don't really remember if there was a bang. And the old man was sliding to the floor. I panted and dropped it. Then I hurled my stomach and pulled the axe out of my chest, which probably was dumb since it was, blocking the wound. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed 911 as the world went fuzzy. Obviously, I lived. Less obviously, I wasn't charged with anything, as the man's security cameras showed I'd acted in self-defense, not to mention the police found many bodies under the house. They're still cataloging all of them. But this is where I need your help, Reddit. Because least obviously of all, the man left me his computer towers. He must have scrawled my name on that paper and then milk crate, so now I have them all. And I'm scared to turn them on. I don't believe in ghosts, but I think they're whispering to me. And I don't know what to do next. Thank you. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light was brought to you by blowing into an old video game cartridge. Does it actually do anything? Not really. Does it damage your games? Absolutely. But does it feel like you're doing something? Hell yes it does. Every time you pick up an old game card to plug into a console, get that sweet feeling of blowing into it because that's just what you're supposed to do for some reason. Because everyone else did it when you were a kid. But why are you stopping there? If blowing into the cartridges is so fun, why are you limiting yourself? Blow into other household devices. The blender, the toaster. Blow on your Blu-ray discs. Blow on your significant other till they ask what the heck is wrong with you. Blow on your jackets. Just sit there in front of your closet, blowing on them. That looks normal. Blowing on cartridges. It just feels neat. Alright, so now we're going to go into our second story of the night, which is a little story we're calling The Chronicles of John. Dren climbed up the rope, bracing his feet against the bricks of the castle wall. Under him, Macra and John were following him. They had to be totally quiet, or else the entire rescue operation would go up in smoke. They were so close to saving Princess Tanu, and they couldn't stop now. A light appeared in a window, and he held out a hand, gripping tight with the others. He tried to keep his breathing steady as a shadow moved across the glass. Then it was gone. The candle the person was carrying, moving away till there was only darkness from the window. Dren continued to climb till he reached the window they were aiming for. Climbing up onto the windowsill, Dren pulled out a thin knife and then slipped it between the two doors of the window, sliding the latch up. Pulling it open, he slipped in. The room was dark, and Princess Tanu was asleep in her bed, her blue skin and her black hair blending into the darkness. Dren reached her bed and carefully, slowly, put a hand over her mouth. It wasn't the way he'd like to wake her up, but he needed to make sure she stayed quiet so they could escape. Feeling the firm hand cupped over her face, she startled, her eyes filled with panic, thrashing in bed, till she met his eyes. He held his other finger over his lips, and she nodded, and pulling his hand away from her face, she embraced him, wrapping her arms tightly around him. Macra and John, who had been watching from the window, smiled, though John looked a bit disappointed. He's supposed to kiss her and give a speech. That's... Shh! Macra cut him off. He pursed his lips, disapprovingly. The princess gathered up some of her most prized possessions and tossed them in a satchel, and they began their way down the rope. It felt even more dangerous than before on the way down. After all, they'd come so far and nearly succeeded. The princess could only hold up marrying King Dragmar for so long before he'd execute her. Their plan had to succeed. They had no other choice. Dropping from the bottom of the rope, they moved quickly. They couldn't pull the rope down. They used a strong crossbow to shoot it up there, and it was firm enough to hold 4 people's weight, so a tug wasn't going to dislodge it. They hurried between the hiding points they'd planned in the courtyard, rushing between hedges and empty shelters for the guards. Timing was everything. Learning the schedules of the castle had taken months of planning, all for just a few minutes of movement. Finally, they reached their exit point. A sewer grate they could climb down into and out from. But as Dren lifted the grate, a spear shot out from it. Dren jumped back and skidded to a halt, drawing his sword. Guards poured from the gate, and more appeared from around the courtyard. They were surrounded. Macra, his loyal guardian, gritted her teeth. The princess covered her face. John took in several breaths and let them out slowly. He opened his eyes and looked prepared. The guards didn't attack. They just held position until they heard a faint clapping sound, which drew closer and closer. The guards didn't attack. They just held position until they heard a faint clapping sound, which drew closer and closer. Well, well, Dren of Hallmarch, you and your army of ruffians have finally lost. You've lost your precious princess, who isn't even your own species, and now you will lose your lives too. Dren bared his teeth. King Dragmar. You know what? Then Dren insulted Dragmar with several choice expletives that caused some of even the king's guard to look uncomfortably at their feet for a moment. Whoa, hold up there, John interjected, pulling a book out of his bag. That is absolutely not how this goes. All eyes turned to John, who was flipping through pages as though there was nothing at all odd about that. Look, it says right here. Dren raised his chin and said to the Dark King Dragmar, "You may take our lives, but the freedom in our hearts you can never take. Despite those gems around your neck, you're not even wearing gems. You have no riches as weighty as the ones I carry. Slice my throat, but yours will still run empty." Everyone stared at John, and he shut the book. Sorry, continue. Right. The king continued. Wait, do you mean the Dark King? I'm benevolent. The people love me. The people love me, right? He turned to his court mage, a woman with blue and red striped skin, who waggled her hand back and forth in the air moderately. The king nodded, pouted his lips, and said, "Well, you know what? I'll take it. Honestly, still, Dark King." "Yes, Dark, you kidnapped the princess." Well, yes, but that's how anyone takes control of a kingdom. It'd save a lot of war, you know. That presumes you have to take over anyone else's kingdom, John noted. The king grew angry. Shut up, peasant! Now, I'm going to make you one final offer, princess. Accept my proposal of marriage and all of your friends go. They can live, but you must share your kingdom in my bed, otherwise you'll all lose your heads. That's more like it, John said. Macra, Dren, and Tanu looked at him horrified. Aesthetically, I mean, John clarified bashfully. The princess sighed and reached up to touch Dren's face. You know, I love you deeply, and that's why I have to do this. I have to marry him, otherwise you'll die. Dren shook his head. I can't let you marry that monster. It's too horrible to bear. She hugged him close and whispered in his ear, live and avenge the wrongs against me and my people. Tears flowed as he nodded. Macra and John wiped their own. The princess broke the hug and held her head high. Then King Drachma, hold it, John said, and reaching into his bag, pulled out a handful of small metal cylinders. He tossed them and drew another set out as they landed. Close your eyes, he yelled, and threw the second set of them. There was a brilliant flash, blinding, that came from the cylinders with a crack. And while not everyone in his group actually closed their eyes, he pushed them all towards the castle gate as the second set went off, filling the courtyard with smoke. They ran, coughing, through the smoke as the guards groped around blindly trying to find them. They staggered to the castle gate, but John held a hand against Dren's chest to stop him and dashed ahead, placing something circular on the great bar and locked the gate. That bar is too heavy for even all four of us to lift, Macra began, but John pushed their heads down and pressed a small red button on a metal box. The bar on the door exploded. The ground rushed forward to push open the gates as the guards scrambled up to catch them. They'd all gathered in the courtyard aside from some watchmen on the walls, so their escape was largely unhindered. Stop them! The king yelled helplessly. Somebody stop them! But the four had slipped through, running across the stone bridge to their waiting horses on the other side of the moat. They rode hard as arrows followed them, and shortly after, other horses. But they lost their foes easily enough. Still, they didn't stop riding until there was no doubt in any of their minds that they had evaded their enemies. Night came, and they made camp in a forest grove, tired, exhausted even, but in high spirits. Dren and pulled Tanu off her horse, and they kissed and embraced. Macra began to make a fire, and John pulled out his books. The celebrations were hearty, but soon they had to ask questions they'd been wondering. John, Dren said, you didn't tell us you were a wizard. John looked up. What? No, I'm not a wizard. Macra laughed. You don't have to hide it. In fact, you don't hide it at all back there. You use magic in front of the whole castle. We all saw it, Tanu added. Oh, right. Well, those weren't magic. They were just useful trinkets, devices I brought with me to help. Dren nodded. All right, but you said some strange things back there in the castle. You seemed to think I was supposed to say certain things, and you celebrated when the king made... He grimaced. His terrible offer. John looked around the group and seemed to weigh his options. Well, I know how things were gonna go if I didn't interfere. I read a book. Macra raised an elven eyebrow. A prophecy? Sure, I guess you could call it that. Tanu snapped her fingers. That's what you were reading in the courtyard. Yeah, I suppose there's no harm in showing it to you now. He pulled the book from his bag and handed it to Macra, who squinted as she looked at it. The Chronicles of Dren, Volume 1. Right now, we're actually in Volume 2, but I figured that's a better place for you to start. Dren and Tanu leaned over Macra's shoulder as she flipped through the book. Your whole childhood growing up on the streets of Haroon is here. Tanu pointed. Look, that's where I escaped out of the castle as a kid and met you while I pretended to be a street urchin. My whole life, I haven't told anyone any of this. How did you get it? No prophet is this clear or concise. What kind of sorcerer are you? Dren drew a sword and began to move on John, who held up his hands in peace. Whoa there. I'm just trying to help, okay? Getting this wish wasn't cheap, He then realized how odd that sounded. Macra rose too. Sheep? John looked between them. Look, this isn't how this is supposed to go. You're all supposed to be my friends. That's in the contract. The sword poked him under the chin. What contract? John gulped. No, I guess you wouldn't. Look, put the sword down and I'll explain it, okay? The sword lowered, but none of their eyes did. So, the Chronicles of Dren is my favorite book series, right? But it kind of goes off the rails in Volume 3. They set up Dren and Tanu to be soulmates, but then the author, Mr. Ryan A. Druckmeyer, decides that he's going to have Tanu captured and get married to King Dragmar at the end of Volume 2. It's messed up, right? You're talking about us like we're book characters, Tanu said. You are book characters. You're the best book characters. All of you are so well developed. Macra, you have your whole thing about being torn between the human world and the elven world since you were raised by human parents. And Dren, you have that whole thing where you pretend to have royal blood, but you have no such thing in Tanu. You long for a life outside of being locked away, a possession to be traded, and you deserve so much better. You all deserve so much better. Tanu, you literally get traded away like property, and then he threw up his hands. In Volume 3, you just get fridged, so Dren can feel sad. It's so dumb. Fridged? The three asked in near unison. Yeah, it's where a female character gets killed so the author can make a male character feel bad. It's such a dumb trope. Oh my god. Anyways, he pointed at Tanu, get killed, or rather, you kill yourself when Dren goes to rescue you because you're pregnant with Dragmar's kid, and you throw yourself out of the tower window just as he comes into your chamber. And it was such a bad idea. Then the author thought that he could just introduce a new love interest and we'd all like her. But she was just really bland. She just seemed to exist just to be a love interest and had no personality. It just sucked. Ruined my favorite series. So one day, I walk into a bookshop and I have the complete set of the books to sell, and he asked me how I liked them, and I tell him it used to be my favorite series, and it just went off the rails. And how they tried to redeem Dragmire and make him sympathetic in book 6, which absolutely not, right? And, he nods, and then he tells me I could fix the series. And, I've heard this before. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I could write fan fiction. But he's like, no, that's not what I mean. I can let you change the story. Actually change the way the story goes. Go in and fix things. I just need your soul. And John raised his hands and waggled his fingers. Macra frowned. It sounds like you made a deal with a demon. I did, John said, but it's the least I could do for all of you. He looked off into the woods. Never mind. Taro shook her head and knelt by him. I'm not sure I believe all of what you're telling us, but you should keep telling it. John pulled his knees up to his chest. I didn't really have any friends where I came from in the world where, you were book characters. I read your books over and over, even when they were, they started going crazy. They got me through some hard times, kept me sane, kept me from hurting myself. I have really dark times sometimes for, no reason at all, and I always knew I could escape into these books, escape with all of you, and I just wanted to get the happy ending you guys deserved. Macro walked up to him and held out a hand. Whether or not you're telling the truth, I think you believe what you're telling us, and you did save us. John took the hand and she pulled him to his feet. She's right. You might be a bit odd, or maybe insane, but you saved us, so if you know about our futures, where should we go next? John looked between all of them. You still want me to stick around with you? Dren nodded. We're misfits and outcasts. I assume that's why you liked us in the first place. You're one of us. He nudged him in the ribs with his elbow. John grinned. Well, it takes you a long time to meet your dragon companion, Drizzler, and, he really makes things easier for you. So, I think we should go ahead to fight him in these marches. Tanu and Macro looked at Dren, who raised both eyebrows. A dragon? John shrugged, and Dren laughed. Let's let the adventure begin. Lead on, John. Ugh, Sarah said as she dropped the books on the counter. I loved this book series, but it just went off the rails when it started getting meta. What's with the addition of this John character? It seems like it's such a fan-wanky author insert thing. She sighed, and the bookseller smiled. You know, there's a way you could fix the series, and it wouldn't cost you anything really useful at all, he replied. Thank you. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light was brought to you by the Sega Genesis. Hey, remember when Sega made game consoles? The Sega Genesis does, and it wonders where you are. Why haven't you called? Sure, the Genesis understood when you moved on to the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast, but they were family. The Sega Genesis just wants another chance. It bought a nice outfit, it has a reservation at a fancy restaurant, and it even got them to put a power extension cord in so it can reach the chair. Sure, all of its games are playable on other consoles now, but that doesn't mean it's forgotten about you. It never forgets. The Sega Genesis. It's not clingy at all, trademark. All right, so, it looks like we have something coming in from our blue light right now. Yes, it looks like it's everyone's favorite segment of the show, Monster Hunter Monthly with, Magpie left last month. So, who's going to be hosting the show? It looks like, well, I guess we'll have to see. So, let's get this adjusted in, and, hello, this is Albatross Jones coming to you live from Utah. My brother, Magpie, has left, so I'm here to run the show this month. Hi, I apologize, I'm not as much of an exciting host as my brother, but I'm here to host regardless. He's run off to chase that changeling he spared when we were kids, so, who knows where he's ended up. Till then, I'm running things here and taking care of the dragon I left him. Okay, Magpie usually starts with an educational segment. Education is important. Did you know that there are a lot of types of dragons, but very few dragons? That's because dragons live a long time, sometimes thousands of years, and their eggs don't always hatch immediately. A dragon egg could incubate for centuries or just days. We still don't really understand what makes them work, because they're dragons and they eat people. But dragons aren't evil creatures, but by nature, and nor are they good. They simply have their own standards of morality that are different than ours. Notably, dragons see hoarding as morality. Having a lot of something is very, very important to dragons. And while dragons hoarding gold, jewels, and money is the most common image you might think of, it's not actually the most accurate one. Most dragons hoard more common objects, and some of them have taken up what we might call collecting. There's a dragon in Newark, New Jersey, with a hoard entirely made up of BBC drama DVDs and Blu-rays. And gold. That just fits in with any collection. Dragons see Spartan living as a sin and are more prone to attack people who have simplified their lives or tried to get rid of excess possessions. It's just a bad call to do that if you're going to be dealing with the dragon. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. But in general, dragons like to be left alone. Occasionally, you get a dragon who wants to eat or capture people, but they're by far the exception. If you want to go kill a dragon, just remember you're more likely to die than it, and it's not worth your life. So, I guess Magpie usually looks at reader mail, so I guess I'll look at some of that. Alright, we have another update from our friends who are hunting that monster that puts people into paintings. Yes, I listen to the show too. It's my brother. A new lead. The monster can turn two-dimensional itself. It can follow us on the walls. Repeat, it can follow us on the walls and move between cracks. Dimensions are optional for it. Wish us luck. Well, that's pretty troubling. I don't really have any advice for you. Wow, good luck. All right, so we've got another letter. Dear Albatross. Oh, it's addressed to me. Well, that isn't that nice. Why didn't you and your brother get along? Sincerely, Cincy in Cincinnati. Hi, Cincy. Look, that's a rough question. Our dad was a monster hunter. I took on the job because somebody had to. Magpie never wanted to be one, and frankly, I didn't either, but I was the older brother, so now I'm a monster hunter. Our dad wasn't a good man, and I think Magpie thinks, I'm like him, thinks I'm cold and cruel as he was because I went into the family business. Well, he went into show business, and he thinks I wanted him to kill that changeling, but that's for another time. And we have a letter from Magpie here. It's an audio form. Let me load it up here. Hi, Elby. It's me, Magpie. I'm off in, I don't really know where I am. A forest, but I'm not lost in it. I'm just intentionally wandering. Totally different. I found some clues to the changeling, and I'm so busy being a great investigator and not needing you or your help, it's almost hard to think about anything else. Ow, was that a pine cone? Why do the pine cones have so many pointy bits? Why did that hurt? Oh. Okay, well, anyways, I'm going to check back in next month. I think I know where the changeling is, and I mean that, so hi-ho, bye! Okay, well, all right then. Good luck, Magpie. Stay safe. I hope he knows what he's doing. So, I guess that's all for me this month. Hopefully my brother will be back to host next month. We'll see. Till then, hunters, please stay safe. Your lives matter so much, and I hope you all return from your missions in one piece. Take care, and as Magpie always says, don't die. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light was brought to you by the Console Wars. Did you buy an expensive game console? After spending hundreds of dollars on it and games and accessories, do you now feel a strange attachment to your console because you invested so much in it? Then the Console Wars are for you. Choose a side based on what you spent more money on and make sure to get offended when other people decided to invest more money in a different one. Get angry and try out sending rage-filled messages to teenagers online. Then one day, see some people playing games together and having fun as a group. Not caring about what they're playing on, but just enjoying that they're together in friendship, bonding over their shared love of gaming. Watch as they smile and laugh. Reflect on the emptiness of your own life. Think about changing and maybe just accepting that other people like things you don't, and that your own enjoyment of things isn't based on other people having less fun than you. Then forget that and write an angry post about those kids having fun online. The Console Wars. It's not an artificial thing made up so you spend more money on one company. Promise. All right, so we have one final story for tonight, and then we'll have our radio play. So, here we go. Our last piece is our science fiction story to round our trilogy of horror, fantasy, and sci-fi. So, here we go. This is a little story we're calling Legion. I finished signing the legal document saying I wouldn't talk about my experiences with a virtual reality experience and passed the iPad back across the table. So, Legion, it's a game, right? The man grinned at me, shaking his head as if to say, "Aw, sweetie, that's a vast understatement. At Legion, we offer you the ultimate virtual reality experience, a virtual reality that's really real." I tilted my head to the side. You mean you have really good haptic feedback and those treadmills that you can run in any direction on? He continued, his patronizing smile. Well, yes. But that's not what I mean. You really weren't told before you arrived? I clutched the seat of the chair with both hands and drummed my fingers on its other side. My friend told me I'd like it, that it would help. I began to feel the nervous panic set in. Maybe I should leave. He nodded paternally. Of course. I'll be honest, you aren't our usual clientele, but your friend prepaid for several sessions for you, so we'll do our best to make you feel welcome. That being said, it's probably best to just let you try it. By usual clientele, I mean, I knew he meant I wasn't filthy rich. He rose from the desk and gestured for me to follow him. We went down a generic corporate hallway with vague and unthreatening wall art and white painted wall on one side and way too much glass on the other. I couldn't stand modernist architecture, but it's not like I have a lot of say in the matter. I was led into a room with what looked like a fairly standard full immersion haptic rig. Haptic means it gives you physical feedback to what you're doing. The only difference was there was a bunch of technicians there, a privacy shade with stereotypical Japanese patterning on it, and a full body suit laid out on a table. Our immersion suits, the man began without prompting or looking back at me, provide actual complete immersion inside the virtual reality. When you're inside the suit, you'll literally feel everything you do during the simulation. Every touch, every smell, every sound, every sight. Not taste, though? He kept smiling. No, not yet. We're still trying to figure out how to do that without it being immersion breaking. Now, if you wouldn't mind, we have a lot of clients, so if you wouldn't mind getting into your haptic suit. Moved by his compassion for my nervousness over his work schedule, I took the suit from the technicians and changed behind the privacy shade. With the suit on, I was covered head to toe with only my eyes, nostrils, and ears uncovered. Those were soon hidden, though, as the technicians led me to the rig, where I was linked up to cords, wires, and had a headset placed on me that fully enclosed me. The world disappeared, and in front of me was a menu full of names. Currently active, 023, male, 23, Asian, 054, female, 34, black, 055, male, 31, white, 060, female, 22, Hispanic. Curious, I held up my hand and saw a digital version of it reach over the names. I touched 055, male, 31, white by accident, and after a brief loading scheme featuring a bunch of pigs jumping off a cliff as a guy in a white robe points at them, whatever, I found myself sitting at a kitchen table. I was holding a coffee mug and could see some neighborhood teens trying to skateboard outside. It seemed like a damn realistic simulation. I felt around the 3D model I was in, and it all felt real. Every bit was there. Yes, every bit. And I was surprised how non-optimized this body was. Usually when you're dropped into a fake body to run around a 3D world, you're an Adonis, built to practically inhuman standards of perfection, able to be an Olympic champion at every Olympic event physically. But this body wasn't quite so. I could barely jump. I threw the coffee mug against the wall and watched it shatter, very realistically, the coffee going everywhere. Nice. I explored the house a bit and had fun breaking glassware and such, but it got old fairly quickly, so I decided to head outside. The neighborhood teens only had one skateboard and were trying to ramp it up onto a car. I decided this would be a great opportunity to try out the game's combat abilities. One of the teens looked up and pointed at me, saying something to his friends that I couldn't hear despite it looking like he yelled it, and the other sound still coming through. Had to be a bug. Most of the teens started scattering, but I grabbed one by the scruff of the neck and clobbered him. The haptic feedback in my hands was really realistic, and so were the injuries. The begging for me to stop was a little too realistic, though. I prefer when games soften that kind of thing. Sure, it shouldn't be sugar-coated, but you don't need to go on full-on crying and pleading for your life. That just makes me feel guilty, and I'm trying to game to relieve anxiety, not get more of it. So I dropped the kid and spent a few minutes seeing what I could climb on, starting with the car, before I decided I wanted to drive one. Luckily, my character had a key, and I found his car. I drove around, bashing into other cars till I lost control and rammed the car to a storefront, and I died. Oh well, it was a pretty good test run though, and as all of my gear was removed, I complimented the techs on what an accurate simulation they'd made. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you come back soon, one said. I would. Upon further thought, I began to appreciate the design choices they'd made. Sure, it was a little inconvenient that my character was slow and normal, but this was a fantasy strengthened by its realism. It didn't feel like it was fake or artificial in any way. That was its power, and I couldn't wait to try more. I called my friend Sarah, who'd paid for it for me that night. It was incredible, right? That's the thing about it. You think it's going to be boring because it's so normal, but that's why it's so good. Everything is real. The cops even come if you aren't careful enough. Did they arrest you? I said, barely believing it. Totally. They take you in and process you and everything. Usually I just log out or off myself if that starts happening, though. Not really worth the experience after the first time. I nodded, then realized that she couldn't see that. Oh, makes sense. I can't wait for the second go. She laughed. See, I knew you'd love it. And now you're out and about and trying new things. Look at Lori go. Look at me indeed. I started my second session the next day, which was a Monday. practically rushing there after I got off work. They rigged me up, and looking at the list of names, I picked out a woman this time. I went on a rampage, just like before, smashing things up in her house, and eventually throwing myself up a building when I got bored. It was grand. The next day, I went after work again and chose a different woman. I took a big breath as it loaded, and excited for my new run. I peered in my new body and began to look around the room. It was filled with Post-it notes, every single one of them covered in text. That was interesting. Maybe there's actually a story here in this game. I got closer so I could read one. You think you're good, but you don't know. Weird. Oh, all right. But it looked like it could be the start of some sort of storyline. I looked some more. Your eyes are masked. Your sight isn't real. Well, yeah, this is a game. Jennifer Hansen, 2734 Markle Road. A name and an address. Interesting. Then the next Post-it note was blurred out. Then more of them were. Then all of them were. An error message appeared in front of me, giant 3D letters announcing the failure of the simulation. I felt the rig being pulled off of me. Sorry about that, a technician said. We had some sort of error with the program. We'll refund today's session and add on a few bonus sessions. We promise this isn't usual. I wasn't going to complain if I got more of these sessions for free, so I shrugged it off. But as I took the lift home, I asked the driver to take me somewhere else, and after finagling with the Lyft app, we changed route to 34 Markle Road. It was an apartment complex, but the names of the residents were listed and assigned to the door so you could get buzzed in. I looked at it. Jennifer Hansen's name was on there. She was a real person. A real life person. My stomach churned. I tried to push out the inevitable conclusion from that, but my brain kept leading to it. I took a deep breath and I typed in the code for Jennifer Hansen. A voice came through the foggy speaker. Hello? Hi, Jennifer? Yes, who is this? This is gonna sound crazy, but I got your name from a video game? There was a pause, and I almost thought she'd hung up on me, but then her voice came back, shaking and with a crack. Yes. Okay, I'm buzzing you in. Come on up, room 304. The door buzzed open, and I stepped on through, going up the stairs to the third floor and then to room 4. I always hate how buildings number like that. 304, just, I knocked. The door cracked open, and I could see an eye and a wall full of Post-it notes. Jennifer? I asked. You're a player, I shrugged. I guess. I don't really know what's going on. Why are you in a video game? She unlatched the door. Come on in. I slipped through and entered into the exact room I'd been in the game. The exact room. It looked the same down to the smallest detail, the faintest piece of dust. The room hadn't been fake. It had been this room. So the players don't know? They don't know what they're doing? What are we doing? I replied. She looked away. Legion contacted a lot of people. Apparently, people down on their luck or with other people they needed to care for. The deal was simple. They'd care for anyone else we wanted, give them everything they needed, or give us enough money to live like kings ourselves till we died, and in return, they'd install a transmitter into our brains that would allow players to, take us over. Allow them to live as us, control our bodies. She shuddered. My dad had cancer, and we couldn't pay the bills, and I've never been the important child, so I thought it would help. But they've been making me do things, do pretty terrible things, and I can remember what they make me do. It's like you're a prisoner in your own body. Someone's just stolen the controls from you, and you have to sit back and watch. I saw her body was covered with bruises and cuts. She'd been through the ringer, but she hadn't died. I swallowed. When I played, I sometimes died. Does that mean? She nodded yes. Shit. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around my stomach. But her eyes went foggy. Jennifer? She looked down at me. Hi. We met earlier today. I'm your customer liaison. Jennifer put on that same smile that man had had. I remember you, I said queasily. So, you figured out how the game works finally. I thought you would. You're a smart girl. So what are you gonna do? I jolted up, pointing a finger accusatory at them. Expose you! Expose everything you're doing, you laughed. Are you? Who'd believe you? And how much better do you feel these days? You've come in every single day since you started. Don't you like that? Doesn't it make you feel powerful? Free? I clenched a fist. That's not the point, but it's true, isn't it? It's absolutely true. You feel powerful. You feel good. And why should you take that away from yourself? This is wrong. People are dying. You're exploiting the poor for your own benefit, and it's evil. Everyone exploits the poor. You're living in America. That's just part of the program. I don't have to choose to do it, though, Jennifer shrugged. But you will, because as bad as you might feel now, you'll want how it makes you feel in the long run. Because this is America, and the self is all. How do you think we got our business model off the ground? People care at first when they learn, but they stop. They all stop. Think of how much happier you'll be relieving all that stress and tension in you. Shut up, I yelled. You're only yelling because you know I'm right. I bit my lip. We'll see. Oh. Put Jennifer back now. Her eyes went back to normal. I ran. 3 days later, I walked into the offices of Legion. I'm ready for my next appointment, I said. The man smiled. I knew you'd be back. Don't rub it in, I said. Just get me in the rig. I pushed Jennifer out of my mind. I just need to feel good. Thank you. All right, we're now ready for our last segment of the night. We always end off this show with a little radio play. So, we're going to, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience?
We good? Hi, my name is Nathan. I work here.
Right.
No, I really don't. I just kind of sit here and hit baby.
All right. So, here we go. We're going to do a little radio play tonight that we're calling Gaming Bros. All right. Well, hey, little bro, what's up?
I want to play.
This is a one-player game, and I can't swap it out right now.
I want to play. I want to play. Don't make me scream for mom.
Oh my God! Don't
Mom!
do that. Here, take this controller.
Thanks.
Kid doesn't even realize the controller's off, and it's not even connected to anything. Heck, it doesn't even have batteries. Finally, I can just play my game.
I'm sure killing a lot of aliens on the screen.
You sure are, Fred. Great work.
Yay. Wait. What's this big button?
Oh, it turns the controller on and off.
It's not doing anything.
This controller was working just a second ago, buddy.
Wait, it's turned on.
Wait, it can't. It is. It's on.
What happens if I move the joystick this way?
Wait, Fred, stop. Wait, something's going on here. You're moving me.
Jump. Ben, jump.
I'm jumping. Okay.
I'm running to the wall.
Ow. Ow, God.
You're so silly. Now do a funny dance.
God. Fred, can you please stop this? I'm sorry. I gave you a controller that didn't work.
Oh, so you admitted then.
Fred?
Hey, Ben, are you downstairs?
I'm down here, Fred.
Maybe you should be nicer to your brother.
Yeah, sure, but who are you? He disappeared.
Hey, Ben, were you talking to someone?
Fred, my favorite brother. Come on downstairs. Let's play together.
You never let me play with you. Is everything okay?
More than okay. Satan didn't tell me to be nice to you or anything.
Okay.
No Satan here.
That's too bad. I was upstairs trying to summon it with Mom's candles.
You were what?
It's okay. You said I didn't, right?
Fred, don't summon Satan so I can play games with you.
Okay. But we really could use a third player if we're doing multiplayer.
You're right. Hey, Satan. Want to play Halo?
I thought you'd never ask.
All right. Thanks to all of you for listening. And thank you, Nathan, for joining me for the skits tonight.
Thanks for having me on. Always love it.
Our producers are Rob Southgate and Chris Mao, and this show is, as always, written and performed by me, James Wilder, and performed live at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois. So that's all for tonight from the Blue Light. Come back next month, where we'll be sure to offer you more tales of fantastic into the darkest depths of your horror, the brightest flights of your fancy, and the biggest dreams of your future. From all of us here at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois, keep your light shining. There's plenty more to see. All right, and now we're going to awkwardly re-record the intro because that didn't record, but... All right, thank you guys for watching at home. I think this is actually like record online viewership we've had here. So thank you guys so much for checking the show out, and I hope I see you guys next month.